One question I ask my guests, because I do talk all the time about how to speak, sound, and look like a leader. Miriam, what do you see as the primary essential skill that people would need to speak, sound, and look like a leader?
So I think there's two words, Lynda. I think it's perspective and passion. I think perspective reflects the competency and the confidence that you need to bring to leadership, but it also reflects that other-centeredness. So I think perspective is very, very important. And anything that you can bring passion to is likely to be more successful than if it's just an intellectual exercise. Mm-hmm. So I think those are the two things that you don't necessarily hear about in those terms very often, but it's something that's guided me these last 20 years or so.
What do you think is one essential skill that you need to speak, sound, and look like a leader?
Yeah, the one skill, that's a good one. That really boils it down. And I think if I have to pick one, I'm gonna go with self-awareness, and I mean that in the broader sense, and also in the sort of emotional intelligence sense. Understanding what's going on inside. I define self-awareness similar to EQ, which is basically understanding what's going on inside you and knowing how to deal with it productively, so that it's not throwing you off your game. So it's kind of that inner game. Yes. And so I would say that's the start. That's probably the most important. Of course, from then you can get into communication and relationships and listening, which is probably the next derivation of self-awareness and EQ, is that good listening. But I think that stuff comes from almost naturally or is opened up by an ever deepening self-awareness. I think you can go as deep. The journey through self-awareness can go for your entire lifetime. And the further you go, the more you're going to be able to handle what's happening inside you, but also what's happening inside someone else. And maybe they're not as self-aware. Maybe they are taken over by mental thinking or negative thinking. Now your self-awareness is even more important because you've got to be able to prevent yourself from being caught into that, especially as a leader, because a lot of times the people around you, you're leading and they're looking for you to you need to have a sort of a higher level of presence and awareness than even in times of stress when other people are maybe not, in that place. So I would say that self-awareness at a deepening level will then lead the way to all these other skills.
What do you think is the essential skill that somebody should have to speak, sound, and look like a leader?
Well, it was actually number one on the list, the first one that I said. And when I spoke about it, I was saying that you need to hold the vision of the company. But the biggest skill that you need to have and practice every single day is envisioning your own identity as a leader. And this is research backed. If we want to change our behavior, change our habits, James Clear talks about it in the book Atomic Habits. We have to see ourselves as the person who does the thing. And so every day you are cultivating a skill of stepping into and seeing yourself in the identity as a leader. You're defining it, you're connecting to it, and you're doing things that can start bringing that vision of yourself into reality. That means that how you behave, how you act, how you walk, how you talk. But it starts with seeing it first. If you can't see it, it's going to be really hard to get there.
What is one essential skill you think you need to speak, sound, and look like a leader?
It's a great question. And there's so many things, so many ways I could answer that. But I think the thing that's really important and that encompasses a lot of the skills really is political savvy. You've got to, again, be able to show up and communicate with folks. You've got to look and like you're comfortable in this role. You've got to be comfortable in this role. You've got to believe in yourself. And political savvy, I think, encompasses all of those things. It's one of those, I'll call it, skill sets that are talked about a lot.
Mhm.
But I don't think folks realize the different pieces of political savvy and what it means. That may be my next book. That may be my book, but yeah.
So if you're going to list political savvy, and you mentioned some of them, how you show up, are there any other aspects of political savvy that you want to discuss?
Well, there are, of course, again, political savvy means political savvy is having integrity, showing up with integrity, being honest, showing empathy. Again, there's so many pieces to it. Being decisive, being able to make a decision. And people are looking for leaders who will make decisions. Being able to collaboration, again, is a really big part of the leadership skills. And being politically savvy, you've got to be able to collaborate. You've got to be able to communicate. You've got to be able to make decisions. You've got to be able to show up with confidence.
Amanda, I always ask this question of my guests. What do you, and you've alluded to many answers to this question, but what do you see as the key essential tool that a leader needs to speak, sound, and look like a leader, and even listen like a leader?
So I talked a lot about listening already, and that's certainly part of it, but I would add on to that and say, take a pause. Sometimes we listen to respond, and we do that because we think the person that we're in communication with demands an immediate response. And so we don't always listen to the entirety of what they're trying to communicate and convey to us. So when we take a pause, really brief, only a couple seconds, the other person isn't likely to even notice, but it allows us to hear the full message and then respond to it in its entirety.
And I don't know if you know that's exactly what I teach a lot. The stop, pause, take a breath. And then
it makes a huge difference.
It does. It does. And it's so basic, isn't it? But
it is.
when we deal with emotions, it's not always easy. Erin, I always ask this question of my guests, and because, of course, this is about how to speak, sound, and look like a leader. And after all these interviews, it's also how to act like a leader. What do you see as an essential skill to speak, sound, and look like a leader?
Active listening, I think, is probably one of the most important skills, and demonstrating curiosity in your active listening to understand who you are speaking to, what their unique needs are, and how you might be able to engage with that other human being in a more connected way. Active listening for sure.
And just so you know, that's another one of those traits that showed up on the list that wasn't there.
Okay. You'll have to send me this article.
I will share that article, and you are very current. Yours is more not from reading an article, but from your expansive experience that you've had working in the world of leadership. What do you think is an essential skill that somebody should have so that they can speak, sound, look, act, think like a leader?
And I love this question, Lynda. You have some big questions, and what I would say is it really comes down to emotional intelligence. And we, Lynda, are a combination of our personality, our IQ, and our emotional intelligence. And the best leaders have the strongest emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence starts with self-awareness. And there's a formula, okay? Going back to my nerd side. And the more that you know about yourself and your tendencies, your triggers, the more choices you can have, the better decisions you can make, and the more success you can have. So it's like a lens on the camera. And, you know, the bigger you open up that lens on the camera, the more possibilities you have. So emotional intelligence.
So, okay. Emotional intelligence and know yourself and be open.
Right. The starting point of emotional intelligence is self-awareness.
I do want to ask you this question, which I always ask. And what do you think is an essential skill to help you speak, sound, and look like a leader? And of course, this is going to be more through LinkedIn and your writing skills.
Communicate clearly and effectively your value proposition, what you believe, and why you're a good leader, why anybody should follow you. But I think that clear communication is important. Always, we look at a lot of LinkedIn profiles of senior leaders, business owners, founders, solopreneurs, and a lot of times we have no idea what their business is. And that's a missed opportunity.
Perfect opportunity to showcase who you are and how you think.